Uh, Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is the first live stream for Business of Marketing channel, but hopefully for many of you in this year, which has had like a ton of webinars and events and going live all the time or going and attending events all the time. I think hopefully this should be the last one as we start prepping towards the end of the year. So my name is Rahul. A lot of you already know me. I used to be a planner, and before in the last couple of months, I have started a venture of my own, and I provide marketing consultancy. I provide training and education for marketing professionals who are starting off. And I also provide the opportunity to write effectiveness case studies as and when there's an occasion for it. Um, this is the first live stream of many more to come. So if you have not already followed me on YouTube, the channel page, the channel link is in the description box below. So do check out the YouTube channel. There's a lot of good content over there. And today we have a brilliant presentation from Yousuf. He's done tremendous amount of work and I'm extremely excited. So I don't want to stand between myself and the presentation from starting off. However, just a couple of things which I just have to mention before we start. We are really happy with the kind of turnout that we are getting for this event. As per the last count, there are around 407 odd participants for the event, which are spread between 29 different countries. I think we've covered every single country in South Asia, Southeast Asia, including some countries from North Asia. There's Australia, New Zealand, Japan on this side. And then we've got people from Kenya, Tanzania, and South Africa. And then we have people from the United States, Brazil, and United Kingdom, and even Canada. So thank you all for joining. This will be a really good session and it will be well worth your time. And during the session, if you have any questions or comments, please write them on your LinkedIn live stream. And that is also the only way in which we will get to know any feedback from you while we are presenting. So do send in those comments, do send in those questions, and we'll try and keep some time in the end to answer a couple of questions. And lastly, if anyone would like to collaborate in a similar way, or if you think that there is someone that I should be hosting on my channel, do let me know. My details are there in the event description as well. So on that note, let's move on and let's welcome Mr. Yousuf Rangoonwala for today's session.
See me? Yeah, there I am. Okay. Hey, Rahul. Hi, everyone. And thanks, Rahul, for inviting me for the inaugural session of, Decode's educational gatherings for the world. 29 countries and some 400 people, so no pressure, clearly. And But I must say that I want to thank everyone who's making an attempt to be here, especially those people who are from different time zones. Those who are up really early, I hope I can wake you up and make sure that you don't go to sleep after this session. And for those who are staying up really late to just listen to me and attend this, I hope you can sleep well, but you definitely wake up very charged tomorrow morning with a purpose to either create or change or edit. There is a reason my name also reads Y Rangoonwala. That's also my Instagram ID. Purposes are about the question why. And on that note, I'll tell you what I'm going to do today. I am going to talk about a few very important concepts related to this question that has been in the minds of a lot of marketers and advertisers and all people and all sorts of people connected with the world of business building. It's a hot raging subject, and I know that there is a variety of people, so I'll try and talk about some basics, some slightly advanced concepts, and then some evolved interpretations, with the hope that at the end of this session you get to know how you can create a brand purpose, and of course then call me to help you with it. I run a startup called Kakkoii, which is into brand strategy, communication, technology, and entertainment. And Rahul and I know each other for the last 5 years. We met when I was heading strategy for YNR Singapore, and since then, we've always collaborated. I have a lot of respect for him as a strategist, and more importantly, as a person. And yeah, this is, I think, the perfect way for him to enter the world that he wants to. And on that note, I'm going to quickly start and tell and share the narrative for today. All right.
All yours, Yousuf.
Thank you. So let me start by actually, playing a video that I had seen a few years ago that got me intrigued about brand purposes, and since then, I started recommending this as the modern business and brand strategy approach to a lot of clients. And there is something at the something in that video that actually may very simply help everyone understand what a brand purpose actually is.
The current story about business, you know how it goes. Business is about the money. It's about profits. It's about being essentially what I would call greedy little bastards out trying to do each other in. It's about business people doing whatever they can get away with. You don't believe this, read the newspapers. Take a critical, dare I say, philosophical look at popular culture, and you'll see the story that's behind this. There are three flaws in this story about business. Three major flaws. The first flaw says that the purpose of business is to make money or for profits. Now, it's not that profits are bad. The flaw is, of course, that people think it's just about the money. It's not that profits are bad. Businesses have to have them. But to say the purpose of business is to make money is a lot like saying, well, I need red blood cells to live, so that the purpose of life is to make red blood cells. What? Even when you need to focus on making red blood cells, as I did a few years ago when I had a fun weekend by getting both my hips replaced, you had to focus on making red blood cells. That still wasn't the purpose of life. Even when businesses have to focus on making money because the world changed or they made mistakes, still not the purpose. Entrepreneurs don't start businesses to maximize profits. They don't start businesses just to make money. They start businesses because they're on fire about something. They're on fire about an idea. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were absolutely on fire about their ideas for what the personal computer could do. John Mackey at Whole Foods, on fire about the potential if you had people eat more healthy.
So this is extremely important because Edward Freeman, the guy who was in the video, mentioned a very important aspect that people who start something or any business that exists is not just for the money, it's for the fire that the entrepreneur had. And this is very important because a purpose, quite simply, can also be the fire of the business. All right, what is it that is driving people who started, who are with it, to come to work every day? All right, and therefore one very important distinction that we all must make, as he said, it's not because they want to make something, they want to make money or make etc etc etc. The reality is that the function of anything is not the purpose. All right, and this is important to understand because if you have to therefore ask yourselves or anyone what is a brand purpose, it quite simply is something behind the function, all right, or what or how a business does things. It is a quest for the why. A lot of you may have seen this circle, and this why is very important because a purpose then as the word itself is, which is what's the purpose? Why are you doing something? It shifts, the conversation about an entire organization and therefore its entire way of functioning from what it does or makes to why the brand does it and what it stands for in people's lives. Therefore, it's a lot beyond marketing. It's not just a message for selling. It's not the about us section that describes historically what the brand or the organization has been about. It is the very reason for the business to exist. Uh, Ideally, every human being should know why they exist. It should not be red blood cells, of course, and therefore every enterprise on this planet ideally should know this as well. And why does this matter? Why is knowing why an organization exists matters so much? Because compared to brands and organizations that don't, brands with purposes have twice the amount of market share than their competitors, a similar amount of brand loyalty and brand affinity, as has been proven in a lot of research reports in the last 3 years, and 3, 4, and even 32 times the amount of social engagement online that they would perhaps not have even imagined or aimed for. Okay, so purposes directly impact business and the value that businesses create for themselves and for all the stakeholders, right from the management to investors to shareholders to employees, and of course, it's the business's buyers and customers. Okay. And at this stage, it's very important to clarify what we will be addressing in today's session. And therefore, because the session says brand purpose done right, I know that within the marketing industry right now, there's this sort of raging discussion that, should there be a brand purpose? And there are metaphysical sort of questions about, is materialism finding a purpose to survive? Maybe, we don't know. But here we are believers in purpose, and this entire session, or this entire approach of a brand purpose is essentially the modern way to do strategy for businesses and brands. So effectively, if you wonder how you should strategically build your business or approach it, it should ideally be in today's times through a purpose. Okay, and it's definitely far more contemporary than positioning. Al Rise and Jack Trout have made their money. Their era is gone. The new narrative for businesses and brands today is definitely purposes. Purposes are not promises. Okay, they are not positions. So what Nike did with the campaign related to American football last year was a view. It took a position about social inequality. Okay, but is not what Nike's purpose is. The campaign perhaps was a result of Nike's purpose. Okay, it's also not just a benefit of the product or some part of the organization. It's a reason for the business to exist. And this distinction is important because this changes the way then strategy works for brands and business, because the entire approach to a positioning is very different from the one that you would use to develop a brand purpose. I'll tell you some of those differences. The first is that a positioning statement, quite frankly, is, and this has been historically the case, is only required for marketing. It seems to be like a secretive document that is never revealed outside of the public. Then the positioning, and this is all the stuff that has been around for the last few decades. The positioning then leads to a proposition, which may then lead to a tagline or a campaign headline, but not the brand proposition, and so on and so forth. And the search for a positioning, therefore, is also begun by the marketing team. Okay, a purpose, however, can start with the marketing team, but in the last 6 years or 5 odd years that I've been doing brand purposes for clients, and I've done nearly 15 of them, I think so. What I have noticed is that a purpose actually involves the entire senior management, and the CEO or chairperson is the most engaged. In fact, we've done them for very, very large organizations and for startups, and we've actually managed to get the CEO's time 2 hours a week, and there have been instances when they've said, postpone other meetings, this is important. So why do purposes matter? I will talk about that and the implications of the importance of a purpose in a short while. But this is the fundamental difference between a positioning and a purpose. And I'll tell you a few more as well. The second is that the reason the CEOs are so sort of concerned about the purpose is because they have to use it for organization culture building, brand culture creation. A purpose compared to a positioning which is only for marketing can also be used for design. It will become your pitch to hire people. It will be used to develop your campaign and communication. This year we did a purpose exercise for a brand that actually wanted a product innovation brief as a result of it, all right, along with a design brief. It's used for public relations and nearly every task that one can imagine in a business. So it's actually a way to do business in today's times. The other difference between a positioning and a purpose is that a positioning is usually internal, but a purpose is also available to the entire world to see. A lot of businesses and brands, and I will show you some examples, do that. Okay. A purpose is so deep and it's so important that amidst a lot of other things that I've already touched upon, it's also the reason why employees or people show up at work. It should be the answer for people if they wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning one day, perhaps during a midlife crisis, and ask, why the hell am I going to work tomorrow? Is it to release an artwork? Is it to write minutes of the meeting? Is it to nod? What is it? And this is important for personal satisfaction, because imagine, I think a good evaluation to ask is why a purpose is important is, what would you say to your children, for those who are parents here, about why you go to work, and for that particular organization or brand. And therefore, from a more business related perspective, it's also the answer to investors or journalists when they ask, why you? And we've had instances when clients have said, you know what, we've been getting money so far, but now our investors are saying, why you? What are you doing? And do you know why you're doing what you're doing, and what makes you special? So a purpose is therefore also, part of the organization's narrative in every way. Very importantly, it's what a CEO can begin or end or her or his speech with, to all employees. And as I said, because a purpose is so integrated into various elements of the organization, one thing to keep in mind is that it doesn't unite audiences because it's not needed. I mean, no marketer, no CEO will want to look at any customer of the organization, any audience, as the same. There are different kinds of audiences, they have different needs, and therefore it wouldn't be sensible to do so. But it does, a purpose does become one thread that can connect all audiences, all right? And then you of course use the thread like a thread of embroidery for different tasks, and you create different implications and different uses with the purpose. At this stage, it's also important to keep in mind that because purposes are a new conversation, and this is an aim of the session, a lot of people still don't know what a purpose is like. So there are a few myths about purposes, because perhaps because of the word, it sounds like a brand, a purpose. I mean, it's heavy. It's like ikigai, for instance. Okay, so I'm gonna dispel some of those myths with evidence and examples, and which should be fun, hopefully, for all of you. Okay, these myths are important to dispel, because once someone understands these differences, all right, between a positioning and a purpose and the myths, okay, one can write very pithy and highly valuable purpose statements for businesses and brands, because as I explained, a purpose can actually transform the way an organization imagines itself, its very reason to be, its pitch, and the value it creates for all kinds of audiences. So what is a pithy purpose like? And if you can understand the difference and do away with the myths, what can you come up with? You can perhaps do something like this. This is Disney's purpose. It used to have a brand essence called Eternal Childhood. About 4 or 5 years ago, they translated it into a purpose, which says, we exist to ensure people can relive their childhood whenever they want. Wow, I mean, this is inspiring. Or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which says, all lives have equal value, and we are impatient optimists working hard to reduce inequality. You can actually read this on their website. Or an example which led to a brand's fame overnight, not just in business but also in marketing. This is a brand that had a positioning like this. We help investors find better ways to achieve their investment goals. But when they translated this entire approach into a purpose, this is what they wrote: "We exist to drive gender balance in the financial world." And this is what led to the famous Fearless Girl initiative taken up in New York a few years ago. Another example for a brand that's been slightly controversial: it used to be positioned as the most trusted feminine hygiene products and education brand. But it has taken up the strategic approach of using a purpose for brand building and organization building. And it says, "We care about all women and girls. We are on a mission to unleash girls' and women's confidence." Just look at the words, look at the differences. And that's the kind of uh, impact a purpose can actually have for an organization and brand. So the myths that I was mentioning are very critical. And the first one is that purposes are CSR or charity. They are confessions to the priest. They are justifications for an organization to make commercialization possible. They have to be ethical. No, that's absolute nonsense. Take a look at this. This is Singapore Airlines purpose. It says, "We want to be the airline whose service other airlines talk about." I mean, everyone who's used Singapore Airlines knows how true this is, because no matter which airline you fly, no matter even if you work with another airline, you always refer to the service of Singapore Airlines. Where is the charity in this? The second myth is that um, purposes are for large organizations who have a lot of money, who can hire consultants and get this done. And we actually have a lot of evidence to say this is just a myth. It's in fact a superstition in marketing. All right. As part of Kakkoii, the firm I started this year in the pandemic, we've done, and even in the past, we've done a lot of brand purposes for startups. This is actually a purpose that we wrote for a very interesting brand called Civic Studios, and I'll tell you what it is. It says, "Towards a world that can be one joke at a time." Civic Studios is actually a production house started by political science and law students in India, along with entertainers who want to create a YouTube channel for Hindi-speaking youth, and they want to use humor to encourage democracy in India. Okay, so this is what we've done for them. The organization is less than a year old. It's a team of 6 people. Everyone's in their early 30s. This is a purpose we wrote, and this one we love actually, for one of our clients called Seven Rivers. It's one of the first few homegrown craft beer brands in India. Very, very interesting brand. It had done a pilot launch last year, and it decided to grow next year. And it's a craft beer. So we wrote, "We exist to ensure that your curiosity with craft remains endless." Again, the team is small. It's expected to grow, and we did it with I think the team involved only 4 people, and we got that done. So these are just very, very important examples, and there are several others to show that purposes have nothing to do with size. They have a lot to do with intent. The third myth about purposes is that purposes are meaningless poetry. Give it to a copywriter or some good writer; he will write it. She or he will write it for you. They are actually unrelated to people's experiences on the ground. They have nothing to do with business reality or what a business does. And purposes, aren't they the modern version of vision statements and mission statements? Aren't they jargon that's complicated and generic? Quite frankly, if purposes are anything, they're actually none of this at all. To talk about meaningless poetry, this is Sequoia's purpose. We help the daring build legendary companies, and I'll talk about this because this happens to be one of my personal favorites, as well as the darling of a lot of people.
I love it too.
The darling of a lot of people across the world. And by the way, this is not just some random statement. Sequoia's betting its entire existence on this line. All right. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what has gone into this, because purposes are not recommendations. They are collaborative exercises. When we work with clients, we actually have uh, a lot of collaborative meetings. I think they can go into about 10 at least after, throughout the entire process, even more, just to come up with the right words, because a lot is bet on this shareholder value, share prices. And I'll tell you why and how a little later. But a lot rides on this. And I'll give you examples of how organizations actually use their purposes really well. So, what is very important to understand here is that Sequoia has made its way of doing business and its reason for existence very clear through one sentence. First of all, it's laid out that look, if you're not brave, if you're timid, please don't even think about talking to us. All right, because we are only for the daring. Okay. It's also stated that it's only for profit. It's not interested in charity. So they've said they want to build companies in a reference to more sort of cowardice. They've said if it's to just do business to get by and to sort of make money, Sequoia is not the investor for those entrepreneurs. They want to create companies that become icons, uh, influence craft, and perhaps create culture, and companies about which stories get written about, companies that become inspiring. They want to create legends out of companies. All right. They've also said that unlike other investors, they will not invest, they will not assist, they will not align. All right, they will build. So they will stand with entrepreneurs throughout the entire journey and whatever is required of them. All right, and they haven't and we worked with a lot of investment organizations, so we know that in the startup world, help means that it can be either financial, technological, or intellectual. And Sequoia said all of it is available. So look at how much thought has gone into writing this one sentence. It's not meaningless poetry. This is another one I love. So the question, the myth about a purpose is that it has nothing to do with what the brand actually does on the ground. This is McDonald's purpose: to serve simple meals in an already complicated world. All right, this is what it had 5 years ago. It has evolved it a little bit in the last 1.5 years, but now when you see this, the simplicity of what McDonald's does in all its products, all its offers, is very, very evident. Okay, and what a beautiful context in an already complicated world. So at least when you have your meal, can't you have it in peace? And I must say, this is again something I really like. I worked with as a strategist for Burger King India, leading its campaigns for nearly 2 years. So quite frankly, we never really had that kind of love for McDonald's. But when you read this, you suddenly feel like showing a little more respect to that brand. All right, and that's the power of a purpose. Another example of the fact that a purpose has everything to do with a brand's performance on the ground is American Express, whose purpose is make American Express the world's most respected service brand. This is true for anyone who's used American Express. It has the only customer service representatives that anyone in the world always wants to talk to, because they are sharp and they are courteous, and you always end up having conversations longer than you ever want to. And they are clearly about the service because they want to be about it. All right, and they've stated it. So to dispel this myth, in fact, what a purpose should actually never have is, quite frankly, a lot of marketing. And when I say that, I mean, a purpose should never have jargon like this. You can go through this later when Rahul uploads the video and shares the deck. But words like ecosystem, best in class, buzzwords that are nonsense, quite frankly. And at Kakkoii and throughout my career, I've tried to avoid as much jargon as I could. Quite frankly, when I'm now free, I can do it a lot more. So we actually don't use any of these words in our presentations. We avoid them like the plague. Paradigm shift, and one interesting one that I really like: core competency. Let me clarify, there is no such word. It's called competence, and psychologically, for anyone who's studied the subject, competencies can never be a core. There are always a variety of competence, because people are not rocks or monoliths. All right, you should and another slide of jargon that you need to avoid: things like benchmarks, scalable, learnings. There is, by the way, no such word, because it's very hard for a verb to be a noun. What's wrong with the word lessons? listen to what your school said. Don't invent things in marketing that are that make no sense, because they only confuse others, and they make smart people sound stupid, and make clients think that they don't know what they're talking about. All of this is very critical, because uh, the aim of this session is to make you conceptually understand what a purpose is. And it's very important for clients who are listening to this to ask strategists to be sharp. I can't name a CEO, but we had a case for a very, very important brand, when we were writing the purpose, and the entire document, and I'll refer to what the document has later in this talk. But we had used some complicated language, and I told my team member, I said, you know her, she is really sharp and she's simple, she will point this out. And guess what she did when she was evaluating the document on a printout? She circled those words and says, what is this? I've never heard of this. And she's one of India's top industry leaders. So that's the kind of sensitivity and sort of understanding you need to have when you're creating a purpose. All right. What you also need to avoid in a purpose, and you've seen it in the examples that I shared so far, right, is vagueness. I mean, a purpose is definitely not so bizarre that it means nothing to people. Okay, it's unrelatable, and when you think about the brand or the product connected to it, you wonder why does this require your product? I mean, look at Levi's. Encourage free, creative, and confident self-expression. Why is a denim necessary to do this? All right, and I'll share another one with you, that purposes should never be self-serving or grand expressions of virtue. Okay, this is Chevron's purpose: to enable human progress by developing the energy that improves lives. Let me take a deep breath because it's so convoluted, and powers the world forward. I mean, this is an important one as a bad example, because this is what a purpose. It's not jargon, it's not complicated. And a key sign of knowing that you're adding unnecessary logic was actually mentioned by one of the best articles on how to avoid a bad brand purposes by The Economist a few years ago, which said that it's like the diverse elements in the Spanish Inquisition sketch by Monty Python, because the temptation is to keep adding points until confusion results. And that's because it is hard to actually write in a single sentence what an organization is all about. But that's the challenge. Purposes are not easy. They are really complex exercises that have to be turned into very, very simple journeys. You have to take people along with you, and that matters a lot. All right, so don't try and sound like you've gone to B school. It doesn't help. Okay. And therefore a suggestion about how to know when you're getting on the wrong side of a brand purpose is that know your product's direct contribution and impact, which is believable. All right, the moment, like you noticed in Chevron's purpose, and that's the reason I said it's an important example, is that it had the word "and" in it. And look at the examples that I shared about the purposes that are wonderful earlier. None of them had the word "and" in it. All right, because they are single-minded, they are sharp, they're beautiful. So don't get to world peace. You can't make it happen. Be realistic. All right, it's very, very critical. And the fourth myth, therefore, about brand purposes is that because they need to be realistic, the fourth myth that definitely should be dispelled is that purposes are just okay, and if they're about people, like the Levi's one was, and they're about random, vague, lofty concepts, but have no reference to the category or the product or the brand's expertise. Not true at all. And I'll give you examples that will prove it. This is Caterpillar's brand purpose. Our solutions help people construct a better world and play while they are doing so. So very clearly they've said, look, we're a construction company, but we think construction may be boring. So we think people should have fun while they do it. But they haven't said, what, our solutions help people fulfill their dreams. And no. I mean, why? And another example, this is something we wrote for Vadilal a few years ago. We exist to make ice creams that become legacies. This came actually from a truth within the organization when one of the founders' children told us that Vadilal has actually got the record of pioneering the most number of indigenous ice creams in the country. And when we heard some of them, we realized that an entire generation of people's childhoods have gone having them without realizing that they were actually created first by Vadilal. All right. Um, this is another example for Avishkar Group. It's India's largest impact investment firm. We did a brand purpose for them as well. And this is it. We invest to bridge the opportunity gap for the emerging 3 billion. Very, very sharp words. They are investors. They've said that what they want to do with the investment is very clear and why. All right. It's for the 3 billion, not for everyone. And it is to bridge the opportunity gap. Now, the opportunity gap, like Sequoia's example of helping, is all kinds of opportunities: technological, cultural, financial, and intellectual. Okay, so therefore, here's the myths. You can go through them later and the examples as well. I'll move on. And therefore, if we know, that these are just myths, the question to therefore ask ourselves and answer is, therefore, what is a good brand purpose? We've seen some examples, but what are the sort of tenets of them that we can use to create better brand purposes and do the brand purpose the right way? Okay, when you're creating a brand purpose or someone is doing it for you or your organization, keep these as the criteria. The first is, will the purpose help the organization move into the future? Think about the examples that we shared. I'm going to randomly recall. I think it was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation one, which said we are working hard to reduce inequality. We aren't there yet. That's something that they want to do. All right. Will the purpose make employees of the organization and organization proud of the brand, and also help them understand it? We actually met people during the research phase for one of the brand purpose initiatives, uh, who said, you know what, we came here because we were in an industry which made us lose sleep at night. We couldn't see ourselves in the mirror. They were from banking. And they said that we quit and we joined this organization because we felt, this would let us make money, but also keep our conscience. And now we are making decisions that we don't understand. So, I mean, what is this organization? Can anyone do it for us? Can anyone tell us? So this is very, very critical. All right. Uh, uh, Ask yourselves, will this purpose connect with our expertise? You saw the examples, all right? Everything from American Express to McDonald's to the others, Caterpillar. What's the expertise? Even Seven Rivers, the examples we shared, they said your curiosity with craft. They are a craft beer brand. They want to connect with other elements of craft in India because it's a homegrown Indian brand. It's never going to say we are going to help you explore your passions. I mean, why? What does that mean? All right. And notice that I said passion, not passion points, because again, that is not a phrase. What is a passion point and a pain point? It's only passion and pain. That's what human beings go through. And therefore, a very important element that we also often tell clients is very important for a purpose is, will the purpose add a little pressure upon the team and the organization and make people feel that they're on a journey? Purposes can't be like, we want to, achieve this easy goal. All right. They have to, add a little bit of pressure, like the one with Avishkar. All right. To bridge the opportunity gap for the emerging 3 billion is not easy. All right. It has to make you feel like, damn, I mean, I need to do this when I go to work every day. Okay, I need to do something that makes this possible. So again, look at the Disney example. To make people relive their childhood whenever they want, that's not easy. Okay, so make sure that the purpose adds a little bit of pressure upon the team. And you will know when you see a good purpose, when it is simple. Okay, a purpose doesn't need explanation. All right, it is very, very clear. So there are no words like and or along with in it. Okay, think about the examples we shared. They have very specific outcomes. Singapore Airlines wants to be the brand, with service that other airlines talk about. Okay, so it's not vague or it's not sermonized generic impact like changing the world. All right, very, very sharp and precise, very, very critical. And this is a request to all the strategists listening. It is your job to write as well, perhaps, as writers in Scroll or Quint or the New Yorker do. You work with writers and art directors. They are creative people. So have that integrity to sort of attempt to become a good writer. That's what I tell all my team members, that, you know what, we don't have a right to sit at the table and evaluate anything that's creative if we don't even want to write like them. All right. And most importantly, all the purposes, by the way, that I've shared, whether we've done them or anyone else has, most of them have actually been written by strategists. All right, develop a craft for vocabulary. Don't just end your life as a strategist. Think of becoming a writer someday, or doing something that influences culture. Purposes have to be inspiring, they have to be pithy. Remember, as I said, they have to be answers at 3 a.m. So I don't think you want words like category growth or organic growth at 3 a.m. in the morning, right? um, uh, they have to be beautiful, they have to be well written. And purposes, if you notice, all the ones that I've shared and the ones I'm going to share now, they evoke admiration, okay? And most importantly, they are believable and honest. And when purposes are this, okay, this is the kind of reaction you get to good purpose statements. Most of these, by the way, are actual verbatims from clients. I want this on my wall. All right. We wrote a purpose that a client said, wow. It got approved in the first meeting that we presented it. And the client said, you know what, this is so inspiring. I want this on my wall. I want to see it. I want my customers to see this. This is why we're doing what we're doing. Otherwise, it's not worth it. Okay. You'll immediately, even when you saw these statements, I'm sure some of them made you go like, wow, that's quite nice. It doesn't say things like, we want to create organic growth and value for our shareholders. Da, 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 da. I mean, those are sort of old-fashioned ways of writing vision and mission statements that are obsolete, and they became obsolete because they were not true. They were not well reasoned enough. They were not sharp enough. A purpose statement, is something that someone will say as an employee, that I don't mind wearing this on my company's t-shirt, apart from the logo which says company retreat 21st to 25th September. Okay. A purpose, a good purpose will also get a reaction within your own mind, subconsciously at times, that now I know why the company did what it did. It explains what the company does, and it makes you want to support it. So McDonald's purpose, the moment you read that, it wants to serve simple meals in an already complicated world, you realize suddenly why McDonald's is the way it is. Okay. And of course, a purpose must bring a smile to your face or a spark in your eyes. Every time I presented Sequoia's purpose, people have actually gone and checked out their website and have applied for jobs, and or gone onto their social media pages and liked what they're doing. All right. So these are some examples of the good purposes that we've come across in the last few years. Nintendo says we create activities for active families. This is the Indian version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and its purpose is we exist to make Gyan, which is the Hindi word for knowledge, your tool to succeed irrespective of your beginnings. This is the one we wrote for Omidyar Network India. We invest in bold entrepreneurs who help create a meaningful life for every Indian. This is Teach for America. One day, all children in this nation will have the opportunity to attain an excellent education. We will work to make this happen. Look at the vision. Look at the desire. This is Google, something that I think a lot of people already know, to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. This is one of my favorites as well. This is a Canadian investment organization owned by the Omidyar Network. It says, we invest in the things that make life worth living: family, health, and nature. Don't forget, it's an investment organization. It has investment bankers, all right, people who wear suits. So it's not that they can't buy all this stuff. All right. I know a lot of people in ad agencies who crib saying, clients don't get all this. They do. You need to write it. All right. They will get it. Okay. If you do. But look at this, and by the way, Sparrow actually chooses to invest only in businesses related to these three arenas simply because this is their purpose. Okay. I think I've got one more example, and that's Airbnb. It's a very commonly known one, to make people feel around the world that they belong anywhere. So this is what good purposes are like, and that should then raise curiosity about the fact that, okay, we know what we need to avoid in a purpose. How do we get these kind of good purposes? There is a process, there is a way to do it, and I'm going to very simply share the way we do it, and therefore maybe you can use it for your own purpose creation exercises. There are 5 stages. The first one is very critical. You can see it on this slide. It starts with a lot of research, and while secondary research is involved, primary research with people within an organization becomes very, very critical. We actually have one-to-one confidential chats with all kinds of employees, especially the senior management, to get their views. It's all very, very private. We make sure there are never groups involved, and whatever we gather, we never share them as verbatims with names. We do share exactly what people have said, but never with names. So that's the kind of sensitivity involved. We understand the organization, the brand, what's going on, what is not working, and then we gather in a day-long session in what we describe as the phase called synthesis, to actually attempt the first version of the purpose and the strategic essentials involved in it. All right, what they are is what I'm going to share now. The first part of it is actually identifying a problem or an opportunity. What does that mean? It simply is, what is a problem or an opportunity for the organization or brand that people can use to do more business, and the organization can use to transform people's perceptions and behavior towards it. All right. Once this is done, we move to the next phase. I'll share two examples of this, and then I'll tell you what the next stage is. All right. This is something we have actually used as for an edutech brand to make people realize the importance of competence over competitiveness for their own progress. Very, very sharp. This is a problem that people have, and we think we can solve this because they think being competitive is more important. This is an example of an opportunity. This is actually used for civic studios, the example I mentioned earlier, to make entertainment the source of civic knowledge and action for young people in India. The next stage is cultural insight, okay, which is effectively an understanding, a very pithy understanding of what is happening in society that can open up a conversation for the brand to make its present and future existence useful, and to shift behavior within and outside the organization, but mostly outside. All right. And I'll give you some examples of what these sound like. Okay. This is one. We actually use this for a brand. In today's world, technology has made finding love easy, but sharing love harder. And that's the reason loneliness is an epidemic. Okay. Another example is that uh, thanks to liberalization and technology, Indians have been able to finally demonstrate over the last 2 or 2.5 decades that the size of their ambition does not have to be governed by the size of their circumstances. And we have evidence, for those who are Indian on this chat. Uh, uh, whether it's Prime Minister Modi, whether it's Shah Rukh Khan, whether it's the Indian cricket team captain Mahendra Singh Dhoni, or whether it's a guy like Nawazuddin Siddiqui, or anyone in the world of technology as well, or who's democratized technology for people, they've proven that ambitions can be far larger than circumstances. Okay. And then, of course, once you have the problem and opportunity, the insight, you write the purpose. Okay. Along with the purpose, what we do is we actually use that to create the organization or the brand culture, which has certain elements that I'm going to talk about. This is what you attempt to do after you've got the purpose, and once you do that, your strategy is complete. Then you write the design strategy and brief, along with perhaps a communication brief if it's required, or a product innovation brief, or a hiring brief, or a PR brief, or an investor's brief, or whatever is necessary. Okay. So this is what your final one-page strategy document should look like. You've got your problem and opportunity, you've got your insight, you've got your purpose. The next element in the strategy to identify is the method, which effectively means how do you achieve the purpose that you have. So we do that, and we work with clients to write that. Then comes a very important part, which is called the proof, which means what evidence does the brand or organization have, or what will it do to prove that it's going to remain true to the purpose. And this is very important, because writing the purpose is just the beginning of the journey. Okay. Brands and organizations have to live up to their purpose within and outside, and I'll share some examples of brands that have not done that and therefore are suffering in their business success, and brands that are using their purposes to actually make business decisions. I already told you about Sparrow. I'm going to tell you about a few more. This is the brand purpose for Hallmark. We exist to ensure that no human emotion is left unexpressed. wonderful, beautiful. Every time I share it, people are moved. In fact, the insight that they had when they wrote this purpose was 1,000 friends on Facebook and not a single shoulder to rely on. That's the truth of our times. Beautiful, wonderful. But Hallmark never realized that it needs to use its purpose to transform its own business. Quite frankly, if it had done that, and if you think about it, Hallmark should have been the brand to create emojis for mobile phones, but it didn't do that. And therefore, it's nearly a redundant business in today's times. Another example of a purpose not used is Spotify. This is the purpose for the brand, to ensure that independent musicians can make a successful living out of their talent. Uh, Spotify is doing well right now, not because it's being strategic, but because it's got a lot of investment and it is using business might. Okay, it's just another app with a playlist and some features. And quite frankly, if you read about this online, and you can find a lot of evidence, shareholders and audiences are asking questions about what Spotify is doing to fulfill its purpose. In fact, there are a lot of memes in the US and in India when I think Spotify did its annual report release this year, that Spotify finally donated $1 to independent music, and this is affecting share price. So to not live up to a purpose is very critical. In fact, I would also recommend to a lot of brands and clients who are clients of those brands who are perhaps listening, that when you embark on a purpose creation exercise, make sure that you will live up to it, because if you don't, some journalist, some investor, some customer will pull you up for it, and they will be right in doing so. All right. So it's a very serious task, and you should be serious about it. Okay. Just the last few points. After you've got the actions, all right, sorted, you need to then articulate what the beliefs or values are, which is essentially the compass for the organization or brand, and what the brand thinks is essential for success. The culture, which is the way the organization will do things, it's the way people will behave. The brand personality or archetype, which is essentially the way the brand sees itself as a person. And a strategist will help you identify what the traits of the tone of voice for the brand or the organization are. And then, of course, some brands like it, so we offer this reasons to believe if there is a particular product, and that's what they want to focus on, or only a brand, and of course the strongest benefits. So it's not functional benefits and emotional benefits, it's a combination of them or just one of them, whatever we think strategically is going to help build the brand. And once you have all of this ready, you have your brand purpose done. And I now remember that I said I will tell you examples apart from Sparrow of brands that have done their purposes and that are using them well. Disney is a great example, because Disney takes its purpose so seriously that every year it mandates the studios, all right, that it owns, to actually create one animation film through Disney every year. That's the reason every year you will notice that Disney releases globally one animated film. It's required. The other requirement is that whenever Disneyland opens up in any country, Disney's mandate is that the first edifice or object visible from a radius of 1 kilometer away from Disneyland should be the spires of the castle, all right? Because that evokes the fairy tale, and if the fairy tale is evoked, childhood will be remembered, and that's when Disney will be true to itself, all right? So that's the example. This is what it is, and that's what I have to say. And now let's hear your questions, your comments, and your views. This is just a basic implementation of the purpose and how you can introduce it to employees within the organization. You can go through it when you see the presentation uploaded by Rahul, and you see the video later. All right. So that's it, and thank you. So let's hear everyone now.
So thanks a ton, Yousuf. That was brilliant. Really, really useful, I'm sure. And we saw a lot of likes popping around the screen on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So great. I have one question, but I think Chirag has already asked a question, so I've popped it on the screen. he's wondering if you could share some advice on how small businesses can communicate their brand purpose early on and even use it to build like a pre-launch hype. And you've worked on a lot of startups as well as small businesses, so maybe you can throw some light on that.
So that's a great question, Chirag. There are 2 or 3 ways you can do it. Firstly, avoid advertising, okay? Because that's not the way to communicate a purpose. Use PR instead. And most importantly, try and use your purpose in every content, every bit of content that you create, okay? Whether it's online, whether it's in physical form. And a great way to actually create hype for your purpose is to use it for employee hiring and pitching. Okay. So when you go to campuses, you've got audiences that want to know why they need to join you. So you can start doing that. That's cost effective. It works, and people remember you because you came with a purpose rather than just a presentation saying salary. So I can in fact give you an example. Omidyar Network is so determined about its purpose. You can do this check, all right? Check Omidyar Networks India's page on LinkedIn and the page of its CEO, Rupa Kudva. All right, she's a very respected person. I admire her, quite frankly. And if you notice, in the last year and a half, everything that she has posted online on LinkedIn about Omidyar Network has the entire purpose statement or parts of it which create the context for what she's sharing. So you can try and do that as well.
Awesome. Okay. I think we are almost at the 1 hour mark. So I have one quick question that I wanted to pop in, and just let me know, as you explained the entire process, there is a lot of logic part to it in the beginning, and there's, some amount of digging around and, structuring things and all. And then there is a magic part to it, right? And, at some point you take that flight of fantasy and you start working towards it. In your opinion, what's the kind of time frame realistically that this kind of a process has taken you? And because not everyone might have the luxury, and especially if we are looking at smaller businesses, to spend a very long period of time doing this entire process. So what's like the minimum or the maximum time in your experience that this process has taken?
Great question, Rahul. I think I should have added, this as a myth that it takes time. We see we've done purpose exercises that have been finished in 1 to 1.5 months. All right, and the time it actually takes is dependent on the size of the organization. There have been instances when we've needed 6 months. Quite frankly, the test for the time is dependent on 2 factors: who you're working with, all right, and secondly, how much discussion happens after the purpose workshop or the purpose gathering session, because that's when people put on their chiseling tools in their mind and they keep sculpting away and keep writing what a good purpose is.
Awesome. So anything which you think is an ideal balance between that?
1.5 to 6 months. I mean, I think, yeah, give it 2 months. I don't think if you're a startup, you don't need more than that much time, quite frankly.
Okay.
And you should be able to manage this.
Okay. So I think we have time, 1 minute left. So I'll pop in the last question for today's session. Should we have an EVP, employee value proposition, or the brand purpose will take care of all stakeholders?
You don't need anything that sounds like an acronym. EVP is not required. You have a purpose, it will work. And quite frankly, then when you go through this presentation later, Mohit, you can see that I've mentioned something called a brand book, which should actually be given to employees, which has the entire organization culture written. The more beautifully written it is, the more appealing it will be to employees. The moment they read something called an EVP, don't forget, it won't get them to work. It won't be the answer at 3 a.m., right? So a purpose is more than enough.
Awesome. So I think we are already at the 1 hour mark. We would have loved to take more questions, but I think that was a pretty elaborate and a detailed presentation. And Yousuf, thank you so much for covering. And the part which I especially loved is the number of examples. You have this habit of collecting purposes, whether they are good or bad. So that shows. And the number of examples, they were simply really good. So once again, both of us, we did this for the first time, and there'll be a lot more content on the channel following over a period of time. But thanks a lot. More than 400 people who participated in this event, almost 29 countries. That's absolutely brilliant. The video will be available on YouTube on the Business of Marketing channel forever. And if you haven't subscribed, do subscribe. And Yousuf has also been kind enough to share the presentation with us. However, the presentation, we will share it in a couple of days. We are still waiting for a couple of things to be done. So thank you very much. This is goodbye from both Yousuf and myself. And have a lovely end of the year. And probably this is your last, live stream or webinar for the year.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Rahul. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.